What's going on? Welcome to Prospect Podcast. Have me, Coach D, Coach DePascal here with me. And then we have our special guest today, Coach Mueller from Stewartville High School out in Minnesota. And he's really just done a fantastic job there, leveraging some things we're really going to talk about with respect to speed and strength and conditioning, which he really is a guru and has really brought to his program, but he's ultimately led them to a state championship, tremendous success overall. So without further ado, let's bring on Coach Mueller. How you doing, Coach?
Great, guys. Thanks for having me on here today. Excited to be here. It's like 25 below in Minnesota here today. So we're in the middle of full-blown winter now, but staying warm and enjoying the off season here. Had an outstanding 2024 season. Went and won our second consecutive state championship, and just blessed to be a part of a high level program where we got kids and coaches that are bought in and really pulling the rope the same way and doing all the things that we need to do to find success. And we do it a little bit different than most with our sprint baseball approach, with our feed the cats philosophies and things like that. But it's been great for our program now and found a ton of success. And I think most importantly, creating a great experience, for our players and our athletes through the process.
Coach, talk about your background, then we'll dive right into all the good stuff here. But talk about your background, coaching, playing, and how you kind of arrived at where you are today.
Sure, yeah. So I'm originally from Wisconsin. Western Wisconsin, a little town called Menominee, and grew up in a very successful football community there. They won multiple state championships as I was growing up through the 90s. And my dad was a head football coach as well. It was kind of a unique situation where he wasn't a coach in the same town where we grew up.
Right.
Both my parents were teachers, and so my mom taught Menominee, and so that's where we lived and grew up. My dad taught and coached about 45 minutes away. So football was a big part of my life, growing up in a lot of different ways. We won the state championship my senior year of high school. And my dad, we didn't necessarily have a shared football experience then. So a lot of our football was catching up on how each other's games went on a Saturday morning. But then went on to play college football at UW La Crosse, and then started my teaching and coaching career in 2008. Actually down in the state of North Carolina. Followed my wife down there after we graduated from college. She had a job, and I was looking, for my first opportunity, and so was fortunate to teach and coach down there for 3 years. And then in 2011, we moved back to the area here. Her job brought us to Southeast Minnesota, and so I landed at Stewartville High School as a FIA teacher here at the high school, and then an assistant football coach, and was the offensive coordinator initially for my first 7 years. And then in 2018 took over as the head coach. And so I've been in that role now the last 7 seasons. And to bring it back full circle, I now have my dad as my assistant on my staff.
It's amazing.
So we get to have an actual shared experience football wise now. So he's been helping out the last 10 years or so. So it's been a great opportunity and a great experience for me.
Now, that's an amazing journey. Talk about, so you took over at Stewartville. What was Stewartville like when you took over the program, and what were some of the things that you really had to evolve over the time when you took it over?
Yeah, so Stewartville has a strong football tradition. They had a couple of state tournament appearances back through the 80s, and always a lot of I would say community support and successful teams, conference championships over the course of its history. It hit a little bit of a lull, or some down years there through the late 90s and early 2000s. And a guy by the name of Aaron Meyer that took over as head coach, I think in 2006 or 2007, prior to me arriving in Stewartville, and really worked hard to change the culture back around and get it moving in the right direction. So he was the head coach when I took over in 2011. And we were able to get things back on track and in a position where we were winning football games and being successful. 2014 and 2015, as an assistant, we made state semifinal appearances, had 2 or 3 conference championships as when I was an assistant. So we were winning football games and were being successful. And And then as I took over as the head coach in 2018, kind of my last 2 years as an assistant, and then even my first year as a head coach, we struggled a little bit, like 5-4 records, just over 500, first round playoff losses. Had a lot of guys getting injured. We're not a huge school. We got about 600 students or so at our high school, so kind of a middle size for the state of Minnesota. And we need to have our best players on the field to go be successful and win football games. And I would say, players maybe weren't having the best experiences and coaches weren't loving it anymore. And so after my first year as a head coach, we, were looking for something, for a change, for an improvement. Because I knew if we continued down the same path, we weren't going to necessarily find any more success and things weren't going to change. And so that's when we kind of stumbled upon Tony Holler and Brad Dixon, the sprint-based football approach, and implemented that in 2019 and haven't really looked back since.
Talk about that. So we've talked to Tony before. We've had him on. I don't think we've ever had anybody that no, right? You know what I'm going to say, right?
Well, I mean, and like you said, because I know where you're going. We haven't, like, when we brought Tony on, we had this conversation, right? We talked about it. He's been on twice. I have now, both of us follow him. So when I heard him start to do his weekly or bi-weekly, whatever, on Coach and Coordinator podcast, he had brought you on, and I listened to the podcast and I was just blown away. So it was the implementation of it. So that's how, we've kind of gotten to this point. So some of those things, talk about some of those things that you've now implemented within the program itself, kind of from where I think Tony called you the Godfather.
Well, I'm the Godfather 2.0. Brad Dixon's the official original guy, and then we at Stewartville kind of stumbled upon their stuff after my first year, and we're maybe the next ones to kind of start to implement some of those things and find success with it. So yeah, it was in the off season between 2018 and 2019. It started with, and I don't know how much you guys talk about necessarily sports performance and things like that on the podcast, but a guy by the name of Cal Dietz, who developed a training system, I guess you could say, for the weight room, to put it simply, called triphasic training. And we had implemented that the year prior. And so that was kind of how things started down the rabbit hole. That led to finding out about RPR, which stands for Reflexive Performance Reset. And Cal was a founder of that, along with a guy by the name of Chris Corfist, who is a track coach and I think the smartest guy when it comes to speed that I've ever met. And so then via Chris Corfist, found out about this thing called the Track Football Consortium, which Chris does in coordination with Tony Holler. And so then those were kind of the steps that led us to that point. And found out about this Track Football Consortium and some of the presentations that they had done. And Brad Dixon, who's head football coach in Camp Point Central High School in Illinois, another smaller school than us even, he had just done a presentation at one of their clinics about sprint-based football and how he had applied these Feed the Cats philosophies to their program to find success. So I watched that presentation and was just kind of blown away with, here's a different way to do it. But I think when you dive into the foundations and the principles of it, it makes a lot of sense. And it was solving a lot of problems, or at least answering a lot of questions to the things we were struggling with in our program. So, I connected with that right away. And then we, myself and a couple of my assistants really dove in head first. And how can we apply these things to our program? And we took that entire off season before the 2019 football year to get things kind of settled in. And how do we start prioritizing speed and rest and recovery and creating great experiences for athletes? So it was like a 6-month process for us. Like about this time, January of 2019 is when we started. And, by fall of that season, we felt pretty good about, what we were doing, and ended up having an undefeated regular season. And things have just kind of been rolling ever since. But I think the big thing with sprint-based football, there's a lot of debate sometimes out there and on social media and things like that. And I think it's from people that maybe don't have a full understanding of what and why we do it. A lot of times they look at, we talk about, it's called sprint-based football, right? So we're talking about speed and things like that. I think a lot of people think that that's the only thing that we focus on, and that if we just get faster, that's going to make us better football players, and that's going to solve everything. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Speed is a priority in our program. But when you look at a hierarchy of needs, right, you have to prioritize certain things over others. That doesn't mean we neglect other extremely important areas in terms of skill and athlete development. We still, prioritize and value the weight room and agility and change of direction and sprint capacity and, just all nutrition and ultimately really speed isn't even the foundation of it. It's rest and recovery is really the foundation of a Feed the Cats philosophy. We would say if we have a 10 commandments of sprint-based football, rest and recovery, we say, are more important than practice, right? Because we got to make sure guys are in a state of high performance whenever we're out practicing so that they're prepared and ready to play. And if we're constantly, beating kids up and driving them into the ground and grinding them down to, nothing during the week for practice, they're going to show up on Friday just absolutely exhausted and maybe 80% healthy, and you can never perform at a high level then in that state of fatigue. So, there's so many different components to it, and it's just this all-encompassing philosophy that we feel better prepares athletes to perform at a high level on a Friday night when it matters, when it counts, and it also delivers a great experience for athletes. Our focus is to make football the best part of a kid's day. And ultimately, I would say if they look back after they graduate, the best part of their high school career. And so when you attack a program or a practice, I think with that mentality is how can I make this the best part of a kid's day? Now, all of a sudden, you're changing the way they experience football, and we create great experiences, and kids, are going to absolutely, do anything they can for things that they love and that they're passionate about, because we create that great experience. So we got kids that are bought in and work really hard, and go find ways to be successful. So it's been a game changer for us, and we'll never do it another way.
It's worked.
And we should follow it up. It wins.
Yeah,
right? This wouldn't be a thing
about the details of that, right? Because one of the things that is difficult to communicate to coaches is how that works in practice, right? So how many reps are enough reps? How many reps are too many reps? When you emphasize recovery, what are some of the things that you do from a football standpoint? And then the enjoy. So it's a 3-part question, I guess. You can tack it however you want.
Yeah, sure.
The enjoyment part of practice, meaning the things that they like most, right? How do you be able to get that done while at the same time having to do some of the quote unquote unenjoyable parts maybe for the players in practice, which is we need to practice this play over and over again to make sure it's done right, and what's your philosophy on that kind of a thing?
Yeah, so let's we can start with that piece, because I think then sometimes too, coaches who maybe stumble upon this or are hearing about it for the first time, they hear myself or Coach Dixon say we try to make football the best part of their day, and it's like, well, if you're just trying to make it fun all the time, then how do you get any work done, or how do you get the hard stuff done? And our kids are not shy about hard work. I think Feed the Cats sprint-based football philosophy is about redefining hard work. When we come in and work, it's with high intensity and high effort. We don't just walk through stuff. It's not easy. It's not soft. Football coaches are obsessed with things being hard and soft. And our guys are more violent on a Friday night because of the way we practice and prepare during the course of the week. And we go out at practice, and when we're out there, we practice hard and we fly around and we go full speed. And on a Friday night, we hit hard because of it. And so it's not that we don't work hard. It's not that we, just kind of goof around all the time. It's about creating an experience that players enjoy because they want to compete and they want to be successful and they want to win. And so I think that's the big thing for us. We're not trying to create these false experiences where we're just trying to make practice fun for the players.
Right.
That, we're about minimum effective dose. We're going to go out and we're going to do the reps that we need to do to make sure we're prepared to win. And then that's it. And we're going to go out and we're going to compete in practice like we do in a game day, right? High school kids love to compete. And so we're going to make practice competitive. And so they love to go out and compete during our different parts of practice. And yeah, maybe we'll throw a competition in at the end of practice for the last 5 minutes here and there, through the summer, through the regular season. But it's more about creating an enjoyable practice where the players see what they're doing as valuable, and that they're prepared to go win a football game. It's not about just creating this, goof around fun environment where it's just about having fun. It's focused, intentional work is the priority still. And so I think to kind of look at, what does a week look like for us in the sprint-based football program? We'll start with Friday nights, right? Game day is the best part of the week. It's why we do it, right? And it's what we're preparing for throughout the course of an off season and during the regular season. So Friday night's game night, and after the game, in terms of what a weekend then looks like, we give players completely off Saturday and Sunday. And that's, a far cry deviation from probably what all of us grew up, as a part of. And a lot of programs do. A lot of teams will bring guys in early on a Saturday morning to stretch, run, lift, watch film, and do all that kind of stuff. And, with the intention of bringing them back in to learn from their mistakes from a Friday or whatever it may be. And I just think that no one is in a good position to really digest and pick apart a film together on a Saturday morning at 8:00 when you've barely had time to really review it yourself as a coach. And so we would rather players sleep in and rest and recover on a Saturday. We think that they're going to get more out of that than they are out of a half-ass film session on a Saturday morning when everyone's still tired and asleep and not in a great mood, especially if you just lost 12 hours prior.
If that.
If that. And so we'd rather give them the weekend off to rest, recover, and then start diving into, the film when we're ready. As a coaching staff, we don't do anything together on a Saturday. We have a virtual coaches meeting on Sunday evenings after coaches have had a chance to break down film from our next opponent and are ready to meet and put a game plan together and a practice plan together for the following week. It's also given us 48 hours to watch the film from Friday and really understand what went well and what went wrong, take the emotions out of it and look at, the film for what actually happened, because it's usually never as good as you think and never as bad as you think, right?
Every time.
And so we think just giving that, that time to digest those things is a better way to do it. And so then we'll come in on a Monday and we'll start with a sprint. First thing we do to start off the week, in terms of, not to dive too heavy into the science of it necessarily, but in a sprint-based football program, we want to try to hit max velocity. Shouldn't say max velocity. We're trying to sprint 3 days a week. One of those days we focus on max velocity. One day we focus on acceleration. The third sprint day is game day, is Fridays. So we're going to start off the week after we've rested and recovered over the weekend with a sprint. Usually for us on a Monday, that's a max velocity day. It takes 30 to 45 minutes. We'll do some speed drills, sprint twice. And then immediately following that, we'll go into our Monday game plan meetings. Now, one unintended, consequence or positive thing that came out of sprinting first after school before we started our game plan meetings was guys typically are sitting in the classroom for 8 hours a day, right, after school.
And you just add on to it.
Yeah, right. And then we go into a game plan, an hour and a half game plan meeting, you just add on to it, like Coach said. And very little, I think, was positive things were coming out of game plan meetings when we're asking players to sit for another hour and a half after they've already been sitting 8 hours. So for our guys to get up and move around and sprint, we are going to turn on the central nervous system. That thing's going to be fired up, right? There's plenty of studies out there showing the benefits of physical activity with brain activity and learning. So we just turned on that CNS and got that brain woken up after maybe they've been sitting all day in the classroom. Guys are feeling good. Maybe some guys would just hit a PR. Energy is high. And so we go into a game plan meeting, with everyone in a really, really good spot. And we found that that game plan meeting went exponentially better than it used to. Better energy, better focus, better attention to detail, and a lot more learning, I think, was taking place because of where their brain was at to start that meeting. And so on a Monday after we sprint, we'll review Friday's game. That will be a more focused approach than maybe what traditionally is done on a Saturday morning. So I'm going to, as offense coordinator, I'm going to have a 10 to 15 play playlist that we're going to go through, look at the really good things we did, look at some corrections, and then we're going to move on. And our defense and our special teams are going to do the same. We're going to give out our weekly awards for guys, and then we're going to move on to our game plan for our next opponent. And at about 5:30 or so, we're going to go home. And we don't do any work on the field on a Monday. We encourage our guys, if we got a home JV, our undervarsity JV plays on Monday night, so we try to send our guys up to go support those guys on a Monday if they got a home game. Tuesday then is our first day on the field, and that when we subscribe to what we call a wave theory approach through the week. So if we have a high CNS day, we're going to follow that up with a low CNS day to recover for the next bout of high performance or CNS practice. So if you're just, burning at 100%, 4 days a week, by the time you get to Friday, you're going to be out of gas.
Right.
And so it's kind of that high-low wave theory that we use to prepare us for Friday. So if Monday is a high CNS day because we sprinted, Tuesday is going to be a low day. Now, it's only a high day because we're sprinting, but the cool part, cool is the right word, but it's the interesting or intriguing part about it is we've been using GPS, Titan GPS for the last 2 years to track what we do in practice and with our sprint work. And we now know that a 45-minute speed workout where guys are sprinting twice max velocity with built-in rest and a couple of different speed drills, that session is more taxing on the brain and the body than an hour and a half practice on a Tuesday afternoon for our guys. So it's crazy when you look at the demand of the sport of football and on the human body, high speed, volume, distance, high speed, acceleration, deceleration, that's what's going to be the hardest in the body to have to recover from. And so by making Monday a high CNS sprint day, we know that Tuesday is going to be a lower day, and we have to make sure we structure practice accordingly. We're not doing one-on-ones, in space. We're not doing, this scaling or this high-speed movement. It's going to be a lot of control, shorter distances. We do a lot of screens in our offense. We're going to do screen drills. We're going to do a blitz period. We might do some short yardage stuff. Our team time is going to focus on shorter distances. So we're setting up our practice so guys are prepared from CNS and the recovery system, so they can be high on Wednesday and come up for practice. We're helmets only on Tuesday. Some people will that with team time. And for us, we use like chest training. Our scout guys are everywhere, so our offense can still feel like they can punch and hit be violent at the line of scrimmage. But everything else that we do is going to be like tag off, tackle the ground, we're tackling what we do in tackle systems, control setting, hitting bags and crash pads. So that's what I've tackled. When we get to teams, it's going to be focused on positions and being in good spots and finger points and taking off. stuff like that. So that way we're able to stay healthy as we go through our transitional track. We can get a lot of work when it comes to that team period. On a Wednesday, and we are like Monday, sprint, focus on acceleration that day, and then we ride that into practice. That's our warm up practice is sprint. And then Wednesdays kind of our one practice of the week that probably looks the most like a traditional football practice, I guess you could say. So we're gonna we're shells, we're helmets, shoulder pads. We don't go full pads ever. But now on a Wednesday, right, it being a high performance, high CNS day, we're going to do our one-on-ones. We're going to do skelly. We're going to do inside run. Our team time, we're going to have a couple more plays than we did maybe on a Tuesday. And so that volume's just, and that intensity is going to pick up a little bit on that day. And I think there's also, we have to make sure to make the distinction between like a high contact day and high CNS day. Like, again, using our Titan GPS data, an offensive lineman can have high contact in practice between their indie and their group time, right, and their team time, but they might have a very low GPS load because they're not getting up over, 10, 11 miles per hour. And so as far as, taxing on their CNS, not very high, but taxing on their body from a contact standpoint is high. And then, on the flip side, a wide receiver, maybe on a helmet only day, if we were doing a bunch of like one-on-ones or high speed volume, high speed distance, right? High speed accelerations, decelerations, that's going to be very high on a load on their CNS, but very low from a contact standpoint. And so I think that was a big thing that we learned after being able to implement GPS into our program was, understand there's a difference between high contact and high GPS load, and then make sure that we're low contact, low load from a GPS standpoint on a Tuesday, and then we can be high in both on a Wednesday. And so, and what does that
Right.
You structure practice to make sure your indie group team times are reflective of that. So, and then Thursday we're back down to, that's another low day. So we're helmets only. We do a script practice. And so we're really quick with that, about an hour and 15 minutes. We have like a 45 play script that includes offense, defense, special teams, situations, third downs, red zone, goal line. We just try to hit each of those things one more time through the week, but that's a lower tempo there on a Thursday as well. I would say like a 75%. We're just more focused on being in good positions for all of that. On Tuesday and Wednesday, we're still full speed with the reps that we take. We just make sure to manage the volume and the load on a Tuesday to keep that a low day, and then we can ramp it up a little bit on a Wednesday. Thursday, we just want to make sure everyone's healthy going into game day. Hay is in the barn, as my defense coordinator, Alex Haynes, says. And so we're ready to go for game day then on Friday. And I think because of that, because of that philosophy, that approach, we've been able to stay healthy. We've been able to stay high performance and execute at a really high level, over the course of the last several seasons. And, we've won 28 in a row now and back-to-back state championships. And in both of those seasons, we've had one kid that we've lost to a season-ending injury with a roster of, we dress about 60 to 70 kids on a Friday night. And so to have, 99% of our guys healthy over the course of the last 28 games, I think is pretty incredible. And we can attribute a lot of that, I think, to our philosophy and our approach to preparing guys to play.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because the time you have is very condensed to really get all the stuff in that you have to get in, which is interesting. And then your practices are probably shorter, right? Like an hour and a half to hour 45, or
yeah. So our school day gets done at 3:00. On Mondays and Wednesdays we're sprinting outside by about 3:15. on Tuesday and Thursdays when we lift. On those days, we don't have an athletic period for all of our guys necessarily during the day. So we have to find time to do that outside of the school day. So kind of that first block of time right after school, we're either sprinting or lifting. And then after that, we'll get into our football specific work. So I'd say by about 4:00, we're on the field starting. We'll go special teams first. And then we roll into our offense and defensive portion of practice. All of our players get that question a lot. Are you a 2 platoon? Or you guys going both ways? We would love to be closer to 2 platoon, but just, we got a good handful of guys that are, I would say 1.5 way guys. They play 2 positions. They start on, one side of the ball or the other, and then they're kind of a backup on the other side of the ball. We maybe have 4 or 5 guys that are true 2-way starters. And then, everyone else is kind of just on one side of the ball. So we got to practice, offense and defense each day of the week. So we spend maybe 45 minutes on offense, 45 minutes on defense on a day, and then about 20 minutes or so on special teams. And so we're out there for about 2 hours total in practice. And that, after we've done our sprint or our lift. And so that's kind of our week. But what we found, you mentioned with the, do you have enough time to get everything done? What we found with this approach is, the quality of our work goes up and tension and the learning goes up, because it's not run that play again 5 times in a row. You screwed it up. Like, you get one opportunity, and we got, we've built this thing over the last 6 years. And so our roster has gotten really, really deep. I think that's the great part about sprint-based football is everyone's going to have 4 or 5, really talented players on the field. It's the next 15 to 20. What does that look like? And I think for us, we've done such a great job of building our roster that, our next 15 to 20 is going to be better than any other team that we line up against. And guys know if they're not performing, there's a guy anxiously awaiting to take their turn. And so guys know that I got to be focused and have great attention to detail with this rep and be really, really good. And when you are practicing full speed, every single coach in America tells your guys, hey, practice like you play, right? Practice full speed. But are you actually creating a practice environment that allows them to do that? Are you providing adequate rest and recovery for them to actually perform at full speed? And I think that's the focus from a performance-based approach with our sprint-based football is guys are actually practicing full speed, and then they're going to get a chance to rest and recover so they can repeat that ability. And then after 5 or 6 team reps, we're going to pull our starters out and we're going to put our number 2s in for 4 plays while those starters recover. And then our 2s are going to get their reps. And then we'll put the 1s back in for another 5 or 6 reps, and that's our team time. So, starters are probably only getting about a dozen team reps on a given day, and our backups are getting 4 or 5. But they know that those 12 reps got to be really, really good, because that's all they're going to get to prepare for a Friday. We don't redo things a bunch of time on the field. We film everything. So we're gonna coach stuff up from film. We'll watch that, our Tuesday and Wednesday practice during the week and make those corrections for guys. We tell our coaches if they have to make a correction with a guy, like they feel like they absolutely have to, then you pull that guy out and you coach him on the sideline like you would in a game, and you put his backup in for that play that you need to get him coached up on. So we treat, team time and practice just like we do a game. And it's been a great approach in terms of preparing our guys to execute at a high level on a Friday.
It's really awesome.
Very cool. It's definitely a unique approach to everything too. And the sprinting before practice knocks that out while they have obviously their high level of energy and their maximum speed capability.
Yeah.
So
right. And if you want to train speed, you have to do it fresh.
Right.
You can't train speed. Right. You can't train speed after like you lift or after practice, because now you're in a state of fatigue and you're training something other than speed development. So you have that's the reason why we make that a priority, is only because the only way to get faster is to train fast and as fresh as possible. Yeah. Right? Like I said, we talked about a million different things there, and that much of it was speed related. Right. So it's a big component of what we do. It's a priority of what we do, but it's not the majority of what we do.
Right.
Now, the implementation of the Titan apparatus itself, right? The tools to track their actual metrics and things like that. How big of a difference did you see when those guys could actually, when you, and I know you post the numbers, right? So that everybody's like aware of it. Does that create a sense of competition in itself? Guys are trying to hit their PRs, right? They're trying to get to a certain level of, I believe you talked about like you award that, right? Throughout the week. Like if a guy hits certain things, you almost give out like awards for that. Yeah. Explain a little bit about how that works with the apparatus itself and how that kind of works a little bit, and then just kind of how your players, kind of go along with it.
Yeah. So Titan GPS units have been awesome. Titan's a great company, great customer service, and it's actually much more affordable, I think, than coaches realize. They have it's like a subscription based model where you pay, it's like $125-$150 a unit, and that includes everything. That includes the GPS unit itself, the vest that they wear, to practice and games, and then all of the online, dashboard management of the data. And so, we have 8 units in our program that I have divided up between, as many guys, our kind of our top guys in terms of on the field and from a performance standpoint. And I have that divided up between different, all of our different position groups, because I want to know what's going on with the offensive line and the linebackers and the receivers and the running backs and each particular group as we go throughout the course of the week. And I would love to have more. We're getting 8 more units for next year, right? But there's a limit on what I can manage and do as the head coach, the offense coordinator, and the sports performance guy on top of it.
A lot of hats, coach. A lot of hats.
But Titan makes it really easy. Once you get started, Titan makes it really easy to look at the data that you feel is the most pertinent to performance for football and for practice and being prepared for game day. And so, I've kind of got my workflow set up there where I'm not spending any more than 30 minutes, post practice looking at some of that data and then applying it to, adjusting practices or things like that. It's honest. Most days it's probably 15-20 minutes, as long as things are looking the way I want them to look. And it's only if something's off or something jumped out at you that you have to go dive in maybe a little bit deeper. But it's a great way to, monitor what those guys are doing during the week and truly know, what are the demands on them on a Friday night and a game day, and how do we need to set up practice to make sure that they're prepared for Friday. And the big thing I was curious about before we started using it was, we, sit here and promote sprint-based football as being a great way to prepare athletes for Friday night in terms of performance-based approach. But what does the data say about that? Is that actually true? And that was really cool to be able to start seeing the data behind our practices and have it line up with the demands on a Friday night. Now, did we have to make a few adjustments? Sure. But I can say, with confidence that a sprint-based approach and how we design our practices Monday through Thursday prepares players for the demands of a Friday night. And, our guys are fresh and fast and healthy and high performance when it comes to the end of the week. And now we have, the data to support that, which is really, really cool. So our guys wear those vests for everything that we do, whether it's a sprint session, practice, you name it. And, there's a ton of different metrics that you can track. And we don't look at everything. Some of the main things we're looking at is GPS load, which basically takes into account all the different things that those GPS units track, things like distance and yardage, high speed distance, like how many yards are they moving over 80 and 90% of their max velocity, high speed decelerations and accelerations, all those components. And it's going to round that into a GPS load number. And basically the higher the number, the more taxing a practice was, and the lower the number, the easier it was. And so, we want to see that kind of line up with that wave theory of a high CNS day being a high GPS load and a low CNS day being a low GPS load and stuff like that throughout the week. So we're tracking that. Obviously, it's great to be able to make the leaderboards with the max velocity and the truck stick, which is really cool. Something that I did not create the measurement of momentum by any means. That's something that's been around for long before our time. But we kind of coined that truck stick phrase to measure momentum and created a KPI basically for football that says, hey, it's great if you can move fast, but that doesn't maybe tell all the story that we need to for football. Mass and size is important, especially depending on the position group. And so truck stick is something that we measure, which is a combination of mass times velocity. And we feel like the higher the more momentum an athlete can generate, as long as they have the skills required to go with it, it's going to help, produce a better football player. So we're tracking that, and we put up those leaderboards for guys, and it's great because it generates a ton of competition. And anytime you're being measured, it's going to drive or improve the intent of what you do, right? So if you're sprinting and you're not timing it, you don't really know how fast you are, right? You can say you're sprinting fast, but we don't know until we're measuring it. And as soon as someone's being measured, all of a sudden, everything perks up, right? And now it gets competitive. And so I think that's a great part about Feed the Cats is we say record, rank, and publish. So we're going to record everything. We're going to measure everything. We're going to rank that and then publish it out to guys. And it creates that level of healthy competition where we're driving guys to improve and get better. And so we use our GPS units for that, but because we only have had 8 kids wearing them right now, really most of our measuring is done we use free lap to time all of our sprints. And so a lot of our weight room stuff and things like that, we're measuring other ways with our speed and stuff like that. Just our 8 guys, that wear the Titans get that actual GPS data, but I'm excited to add some more units this year so we can expand that and get more of our starters out in the field. But yeah, it's just been an outstanding tool that we've used to help, implement the things that we feel are important to prepare guys for Friday.
Well, those metrics are such a big deal. It helps you to track and helps them to understand where they're going, because otherwise they're just they feel like they start to just feel like they're practicing to practice and
is this really helping and what's it doing to improve and things like that.
Right.
I think that's the great part is we're able to tie that success now with the improvement in these other areas and
show them.
Guys kind of know the why behind it and show them here's the reasoning. And so it's been really good to create that buy-in and help reinforce the things that we feel matter in terms of developing, high performance athletes.
No doubt about it. It's an incredible model. Strength component of everything. How does is that approach similar to your speed approach? How does that work for you?
So we don't. It's not like we don't lift or don't prioritize the weight room and strength. We still do. It's a big part of what we do. I think the big thing is that we're just focused on we don't want to detrain speed with what we're doing in the weight room. And so the last couple, really since we started kind of the sprint-based approach, very much focused on velocity-based training in the weight room, so VBT. So everything we do in there, we're tracking bar speed on our core lifts, things like hex bar deadlift, bench press, safety bar, split squat. We don't do really any Olympic lifting in our program anymore, so we don't do power cleans or we don't do much with back squat. We still incorporate some lighter weight stuff. We do front squat. But we've just found that we can still build the same qualities we want in an athlete with maybe picking some different exercises that don't have a limiting factor based on technique or are maybe a little less risky in terms of player safety and health. And so the great part about having this approach is we're getting faster. Our data has shown that throughout the course of an off season, as well as during the football season, our guys get faster, but we're getting stronger as well. And I think that's the really cool byproduct of it. Just because our focus isn't strength doesn't mean we're still not getting stronger, because strength is a component of power, right? And speed and getting faster. So as we are able to move weight faster, we're getting stronger as a byproduct of it. I would say with our younger population of athletes, 9th and 10th grade, we still have maybe a little bit more of an emphasis in building a foundation of strength. A lot of those guys maybe are undertrained and still developing. And so size and strength and mass matter in football, and especially at that age as they're growing. So there's probably more of an emphasis in it with that younger group. And as they start to develop and mature and get to be juniors, seniors in high school, then the focus shifts a little bit more away from that, and then focusing on speed and power, and how do we apply that strength to the sport that we're playing. Because I think that's the biggest thing is you can go in the weight room and be the strongest guy in the room, but if you can't go apply that strength on the field when you're playing, then it's worthless. And so I think with our velocity-based approach, there's a time constraint to everything we do, just like there is in sport, right? On the line of scrimmage, as an offensive lineman, I got, less than a second from the snap of the football to point of contact. And if I can't deliver force in a short amount of time explosively, I'm not going to win very often. And so how can we train that in the weight room as well, right? We have to add in a time constraint to the weight room, and how quickly and explosively can we apply that and develop those skills. And so by including velocity-based training, our guys are able to develop those qualities, and we've know it to be true, at least in our program, that guys are able to express their strength out on the field better than anybody. And we might not break a bunch of weight room records or even be the strongest team on the field versus who we line up against, but we're able to better apply our strength. And so we're stronger, I would say, playing the sport of football, which is really all that matters, right? We're not winning any state championships for how much we can squat in the weight room. And so I think if you prioritize things the right way, you're able to build all those qualities still and create great athletes.
Is some of that position-based, how you adjust things, or do you
a little bit, not really. We're pretty general in the weight room, I would say. We got a lot of guys that play multiple sports,
Right.
Yeah, I heard you speak about that, and that's important, right? And Dave and I, we are extreme advocates of multiple sport guys. Not to cut you off, and you know what I mean? It's just I think that's so important. And a lot of guys, I feel like a lot of coaches kind of battle with that whole, if a guy's doing a winter sport or something and you're not getting the weight room time, and are they getting stronger, and are they this, we're just advocates of competing and doing those things. And, those sports itself work different muscle groups and all those kind of things. So we're big advocates of it. And especially with a roster like yours, I'm sure, you want guys in the weight room, but if they're playing other sports, it kind of cancels it out and does the same thing.
Yeah. And we're fortunate enough where a lot of our varsity programs are utilizing the weight room in season as well. So right now we got a lot of guys that are, basketball players and wrestlers, and they're getting in the weight room with their varsity teams 1 to 2 days a week right now. And so they're maintaining that throughout the course of the season. And, I help out with our off-season groups right now. And, all those guys are getting ready for track season or getting ready for baseball, getting ready for golf. And so we want to make sure we're training them in a way that they're going to be successful in the other sports that they play, because football might not be their favorite sport. Right. They enjoy football and they love being a part of our program and competing, but it might not be their favorite thing that they do. And so, they might be the most passionate about baseball. And so we want to make sure we're still training them to be great baseball players as well. And so I would say, we're pretty general in the weight room for the most part. When we're in season, it might be a little bit more specific, to the training that they're doing in season. But if they're an off-season athlete, we try to keep it as general as possible to just build, those foundational qualities of, we call them apex predators, but lift heavy, right? Jump high, jump far, throw things, be able to rotate well, all those things that are going to make you a better athlete, regardless of the sport that you play.
Yeah, I think that it's that cross ability to play different sports helps you overall in football. I mean, football more than anything, but it's always a battle. I think in the long run, as they get older, sometimes getting kids to be able to continue to do multiple sports, and a lot of it is not football. Football is really not the culprit of that as much, because other sports help football per se. You know what I mean? Basketball, obviously, wrestling, and they'll track. They have components that help football training wise. There are football actions in those sports, right? So, but other sports where there's like high repetition, sometimes they feel squeezed, you know that I always bothers me. Like I hear it. I mean, I hear it all the time.
Pisses me off.
Yeah, and it's like, oh well, I can't. I don't know. How am I going to continue to play baseball if I can't take 150 reps of hitting the ball in the winter like these kids do? And my question is this: I'm just curious because there's probably, you know, I'm not asking you to be an expert on this, but what is your opinion on? I believe that you can develop that skill, some of those rapid skills, very quickly once you get within the first, 30 days of that next season, pretty quickly, right? But the speed and the overall athleticism component has to be kind of a year-round thing. But the specific skill, I think you can ramp up fairly quickly. I'm not saying that there isn't something to doing it 6 months out of the year. I understand that, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I'll speak to football because that's my area of expertise,
Okay.
right? And then I can give you a maybe in some of the other stuff.
Okay.
I can say this here, and here's kind of our experience, I guess, with our program.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of ties back into that feed the cats approach as well. That minimum effective dose, like, we only ask our guys to come do as much as we feel they need to be successful, because we know that guys are, like I mentioned, they're basketball players, they're baseball players, and those are, I think, more highly technical, skill-based sports that require more time to become better at whatever you have. If you're a pitcher, right? In baseball, a shooter, right? In basketball, that's going to take more hours of that skill development than maybe what football is, depending on the position you play, outside of maybe the position of quarterback.
Right.
Football is a much more general, athletic, right, skill-based sport. I feel we can coach guys up and get them ready to play and execute at their position with less time than maybe what coaches need for other higher skilled sports. And so we don't ask like a ton of our guys in the off season, because we know they're doing other sports and stuff too. Like if I were to ask, all this extra time for our guys to play football, then we're going to lose guys, because some of those guys are going to say, well, I don't have enough time to do both. So I can't play football, so I'm going to do these sports instead. Or they're going to quit other sports because they want to do football. And then I would feel terrible about, because I don't want to lose a kid for that reason. So I don't want to do that to another person's, program as well. So we try to keep a minimum effective dose to what we do from a skill-based approach, just to make sure we're not asking so much of those guys that they feel like they can't do anything else. I do feel things like basketball, baseball, stuff like that require more time and practice and reps. How much I can't say as an expert in those areas, but I feel like we would get more kids involved with more activities if more sports in general followed a minimum effective dose model to what they do, because more is just more. It's not always better. And there is a certain amount that you need to do to improve and get better. Not saying you just sit around and don't do anything, expect to improve from that. But a lot of times it's overkill with what we do. We burn kids out and then they quit, and don't ever, get to the point of varsity athletics because they did so much as a youth athlete, that they're tired of it. And then it was just a waste of time and money place. So there's a balance to it, I think, for sure. But yeah, it's, how can you find a way to do enough to improve and get better, but also be involved as much as you can.
Great point. Great answer. Is really good. It's always a tough balance, and you're trying to, like, to me. I think people. I think specialize before they even know what they're good at, in that um, and I think that, and it goes for even obviously our own sport, football, which we love. But like, I think kids specialize in a lot of things way before they know what they're good at, and I think that's, to me, that's a mistake. But it's definitely part of, like, this culture where by the time they reach middle school, like, everybody's like, you got to focus on these two things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
it's like they're being pressured, right? Like they're being pressured into make a decision, and whether it's mom or dad or another, coaches are a huge part of the problem, right? Like, if you want to be great, then you gotta, in the winter, I know you like basketball, but you should be throwing with a quarterback coach and lifting these days and running these days. And like you said, Coach, it creates burnout at such a young age. By the time they get to you, they don't even want to experience it. Like, I'm not doing that. It's like, this is way different with how we do it.
Yeah. And I think it's tough because there's, every place is different and every kid's different. Like, if you're, there's probably a level of specialization to an athlete that's going to go play Division I in the sport that they are good at. There's probably another level of preparation that needs to take place versus the general, the regular high school athlete. But that's, less than 5% of the population. I think what gets lost is, every parent thinks that their kid is Division I.
Oh yeah.
It's, probably not the case. And so just being realistic with where you're at from an ability standpoint. I think too, depending on the program and how they do things, just going out for, and playing multiple sports for the sake of playing multiple sports maybe isn't the best thing necessarily either, depending on the experience and how the coach runs a program and things like that too. So I think there's caveats to everything, and you got to be careful.
Knowing your kid, I guess, knowing the kid.
Right. Yeah, right. And how much.
Or knowing your program.
Yeah. You got to be careful painting a broad brush with broad brush to a lot of that stuff, because every situation might be a little bit different and unique and what's best for that student athlete. But I do feel like specializing super early isn't necessarily in the best interest.
It's interesting. It's interesting because you look at, Tiger. Let's use Tiger Woods, for example, right? Obviously, his father had him specialize from a certain get-go and made him. I mean, obviously, he's the greatest ever. But then there are other things that maybe he was lacking.
Well, he's a unicorn, though, right? He's a unicorn. Like, you can't.
Right, then he's doing it with his son, though. So it's interesting. Yeah. I think is interesting is that he's doing it with his son. His son is having a similar level of success. My kind of point on that is that, because I'm a huge advocate of multiple sports, is you got to be able to read your kid too. Like, you've got, like, not just how you want to see what your kid is, but really
what they want to do.
Yeah, really have the conversation with them. And when you see pushback on something, which kids do, right? That's how they tell you when they're young. They tell you when they're young. They don't say, like, maybe some kids are bold enough to say no, but most of them don't say no as young kids. What they'll do is they'll sigh and not want to go. And then you have to figure out, what is the reasoning for that, right? And are you pushing them to do one thing too much? And then you might have some kids that just are like that, just want to do one thing. And I think that's the hardest part. And it's the same thing, I'm sure, in high school, right? You'll have a kid that'll come out to you and he's like, I just want to play football, coach. And other sport teams are like, he's such a great baseball player. I don't know why he doesn't want to play baseball too. But that kid and the parent has assessed it well enough, not just because he wants to be a Division I football player, but really just because that's what he's all in on, right? And then there's that balance. I think that's important, which I think is really what your answer was so great on is because that is you really have to understand. And as a coach, that's the hardest thing, is like understanding your own kids, because even though you spend a lot of time with them, you're not in their home with them, so you don't know what's going on all the time. Is to try to figure out, okay, how can I guide them along this path? Like, there are some kids that should be with me all the time, and there's some kids that should be doing 3 sports, and they should not be stopped from that, because not only is it great for them, but the school, like, you know, I think some kids undervalue the fact, man, if I'm that good of an athlete and I go to each one of these next 2 sports, like, as much as I hero as I am in baseball, I mean, I'm a hero again in football. I'm a hero. I mean, that doesn't change when you're a good athlete, you know?
Right. I think it's okay sometimes to be really good in one sport, but then go out and be a role guy in another one, right? I think it helps you appreciate the other guys that you play with, you know, in those other activities that help you be great in the sport that you're great in. You can go help someone else. But like I said, it's a balance.
Great point.
And how to learn to be in a different role too, right? Like, look, you might be the quarterback and the superstar on the football team, but now maybe you're the 6th man in basketball, or, you know, maybe you're just, you know, the 3rd pitcher when it comes to baseball. To learn those different roles and how to be a part of a team, you know, on different levels, I think that's just extremely important as well.
A lot of value. Yep. For life, everything right down the road, for sure.
No doubt. Well, Coach, it's been phenomenal having you on. Really, really enjoyed it. The feed the cats philosophy, we believe wholeheartedly in it. And like, we try to do it in our own stuff as much as we're able to do it. And it's a phenomenal philosophy, and I love to see the success you've had, and best of luck with you continuing on in the future. And you're the guinea pig. You're one of the guinea pigs for it all. So
yeah.
You know,
well, and I think it's, you know, it's a great example of, if you do it right, you know, it works and it wins, right? And that's why I said, like I said at the beginning, we wouldn't be here having this conversation if it didn't win.
Right. And I think that's your biggest, you know, because I'm sure you get a ton of blowback, right? And pushback. And like, oh, you know, because football, it's old school. It's tough. We got to run them into the ground and we got to toughen them up so that they're ready to go. And, you know, gassers on this day and 110s over here and all this stuff. And, you know, because that's how we were coached. That's what we did. That's what most parents understand. And I'm sure you get a ton of blowback in terms of, well, hey, you know, they need to be doing more of this, or that's why it's not, whatever. And all you have to do, Coach, is, hey, the last time we lost 28 games ago, right? Like, you know, we've won 2 state titles playing, you know, where the Vikings play, guys. So listen, it's a philosophy that I'm sure it took some time to implement and some time to get rolling. But, you know, Coach, really appreciate you taking the time, man.
You bet. No, and there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, right? And different teams have been successful doing it a lot.
No pun intended.
Right. Yeah, there you go. But for us, you know, just the fact that we can create a great experience and keep kids healthy and fresh and fast and loving what they do, we just feel like it's the best way to do it. So appreciate you guys having me on, and look forward to doing it again sometime.
Thanks, Coach. Have a fantastic day.
You bet.
All right.
Take care, Coach. Thanks.
All right, great. Let me just end it because I got to jump on another one.
You have a huge day, I'm sure, buddy.
Busy day. But we'll end it here, and then we'll go. He was phenomenal. It was great. It's great to talk to a football coach that's applying it, right? So that's really.
Well, I'm gonna try and get Brad Dixon because I've been in touch with him. We're just trying to figure out a schedule. Who's really like the guy that really kind of took Tony's stuff and really hammered it home. I just like it because a lot of guys can compare to his size of a roster, right? The type of kids that he has, you know what I mean? So I thought that would be really good to see how he actually implements it. I mean, look, he just literally went through his Monday through his weekly in season. Awesome. This is exactly how you do it, right?
Absolutely awesome.
Appreciate it. All right.